The text that changed everything. The notification came at 9:47 in the evening. Marco Vidal was standing at the kitchen counter, still in his work shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, a half-eaten bowl of pasta going cold beside him. He had been sketching on a napkin the curve of a staircase for a client who wanted something that feels like falling in love going upward. He'd been stuck on it for an hour, and then his phone buzzed. He picked it up without thinking. Flying to Milan tonight with Dante for the brand relaunch. Don't wait up. That was all. No heart. No voice note. No, I'll miss you. Just 9 words and a dash, and the letter that used to mean everything. Marco set the phone face down on the counter. He stood very still. Outside, Barcelona hummed softly. Taxis, a distant guitar, someone's laughter echoing off old stone walls. It was the kind of night that usually made him feel lucky to live in this city, in this apartment, with this woman. But right now the apartment felt like a hollow chest with something missing from inside it. He poured himself a glass of Tempranillo. Deep red, almost purple in the low kitchen light. He didn't drink it. He just held it. Dante Moreau. He knew the name, of course. Sophia had mentioned him, her creative director, brilliant, demanding, French, annoyingly charming by all accounts. Marco had never met him in person, but he'd seen him once in a photo on Sophia's work profile. Tall, silver-streaked hair, the kind of man who looked like he belonged in a perfume advertisement. Marco ran a hand through his own dark hair and exhaled slowly. It's work, he told himself. She travels for work. This is not new. But something felt new. The text felt new, in the wrong way. Stripped of warmth. Transactional. Like something you'd send to a neighbor about a package delivery, not to the man you had promised your whole life to. He walked to the window. The city blinked back at him, indifferent and beautiful. He remembered the last time Sophia had flown somewhere for work. 2 years ago, a pop-up event in Paris. She had called him from the boarding gate. He could still hear it. Marco, I already miss our bed. I already miss your terrible morning coffee. I already miss you. She had been laughing, her voice bright and warm as sunlight. Tonight, nothing. Not even a goodbye. He picked up his phone again, stared at the screen. Typed, have a safe flight. Deleted it. Typed, call me when you land. Deleted that too. Finally, he set the phone on the nightstand and lay down on his side of the bed, still dressed, staring at the ceiling. Her pillow still smelled faintly of her perfume, something floral and warm, jasmine and cedar. He pressed his fingers against the fabric without meaning to. Dante Moreau, the name returned to him, uninvited. Marco closed his eyes and forced himself to think about the staircase, the one that felt like falling in love going upward. But tonight, all he could feel was the falling. Part 2, Milan, midnight, and misunderstandings. Milan was cold and gleaming and indifferent to Sophia's exhaustion. The hotel was near the Duomo. Sleek, modern, the kind of place that made you feel both important and completely replaceable. Sophia dropped her luggage in her room, splashed water on her face, and was back in the elevator within 20 minutes because Dante had already sent 3 messages about the pre-meeting drink at the rooftop bar. Dante Moreau was not a patient man. She found him at a high table near the edge, the city spread out below them like scattered diamonds. He had ordered sparkling water for himself and was already annotating a printed deck with a silver pen. You look tired, he said, not looking up. I feel it, she admitted, sitting across from him. The pitch is at 9 sharp tomorrow. Giancarlo Romano is flying in from Rome. He will decide in that room whether this campaign lives or dies. Dante finally looked at her over his reading glasses. So sleep. And sleep well, Sophia nodded. She ordered a glass of Prosecco she didn't really want. They went through the deck together for 40 minutes. At some point, Sophia shifted in her seat and her hand rested briefly on Dante's forearm while she pointed at a slide. This transition here, I want to change the visual, and Dante leaned in to look. He was nothing. Work. Completely, utterly nothing, but someone was watching. Not in that room. Not in Milan. But 1,400 kilometers away in Barcelona, Marco had opened Instagram on his phone, something he never did, and found himself on Sophia's professional page, which she updated occasionally for brand events. A colleague had tagged her in a photo. The rooftop bar. Sophia leaning forward, hand on Dante's arm, both of them close, the Milan skyline behind them like a postcard. The caption read, Our dream team making magic sparkles at Sophia Reyes at Dantamara_creative. Marco's thumb hovered over the screen. 34 likes. A fire emoji from someone named Camille. A comment that said you two are unstoppable. He put the phone down on the passenger seat of his car. He'd driven out without realizing it, ended up parked on the old street near their first cafe, a narrow place called La Esquina Dorada. The Golden Corner. They'd had their third date here. She had stolen all his churros and he had pretended to be outraged, and she had kissed him to make up for it, and he had forgotten every complaint he'd ever had in his entire life. The cafe was closed now. Dark windows, chairs stacked inside. Marco leaned his head back against the seat. "You two are unstoppable," he thought about calling her. He even brought up her name in his contacts. Her photo, taken on their last anniversary, she was laughing, her dark hair loose, looked back at him. He couldn't do it. Not like this. Not with suspicion gnawing at his voice. She would hear it. She always heard everything in him. Instead, he drove home in silence, poured the untouched glass of Tempranillo down the drain, and lay awake in the dark, replaying every distant moment of the last 3 months. The late nights, the short answers, the weekends she spent working, the way she sometimes looked through him instead of at him. When did we stop talking? He wondered. And how did I not notice until tonight? What the heart hides. Leo arrived at the studio the next morning uninvited, which was the only way Leo ever arrived anywhere. He was 44, thick-bearded, a structural engineer who had been Marco's closest friend since university. He carried 2 coffees in paper cups and set one on Marco's desk without a word, the way you do when you already know something is wrong. Marco looked up from his drafting table. There were dark circles under his eyes. "You look like a building with no foundation," Leo said, pulling a stool over. "Thank you, Leo, I'm serious." "What happened?" Marco told him. All of it, the text, the photo, the drive to the old cafe, the sleepless night. Leo listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. When Marco finished, Leo turned his coffee cup slowly in his hands. "Can I ask you something?" "Obviously not, but go ahead." "In the 7 years you've been with Sophia," Leo paused, "has she ever actually given you a reason to not trust her?" Marco opened his mouth. "Closed it, a real reason," Leo added. "Not a feeling. Not a photo of 2 people looking at a PowerPoint presentation." "It wasn't a PowerPoint, it was Marco." Silence. Marco exhaled. "No," he admitted quietly. "No, she hasn't." "Then what you're doing right now," Leo said carefully, "is punishing her for your fear. And fear is a terrible architect. It builds walls where there should be windows." Marco stared at his half-finished staircase sketch. That night, just past midnight, his phone rang at Sophia. He answered on the second ring, heart loud in his chest. "Hey," her voice was soft, low, slightly hoarse from a long day. It was the most beautiful sound he'd heard in days. "Hey," he said back. Just that. A pause. Long, warm, full of everything unsaid. "I'm tired," she whispered. The pitch was brutal. "Dante pushed us until 8 tonight. Did it go well?" "I think so." "I hope so." Another pause. "Marco, she stopped. "You what?" I miss the way things feel at home. I miss your smell. I miss how quiet it gets when you're sketching and you forget the whole world exists." Her voice caught slightly. "I miss feeling like we're us." Marco pressed the phone harder against his ear, as if he could close the distance by sheer force. "We are us," he said. "We're always us, are we?" The question was barely above a whisper, and it carried years in it, not accusation, just honest fear. He didn't answer right away. The apartment was dark around him, and he was sitting on the edge of their bed, her jasmine cedar pillow beside him. "Come home soon," he said finally. His voice was rough with things he hadn't said in too long. "I will," she breathed. "I promise." They stayed on the line for another hour, barely speaking, just breathing. It was the most intimate they had been in months. 2 people finding each other in the dark across 1,400 kilometers of nothing and everything. Part 4. The secret she was keeping. The presentation hall was all glass and cold light. Giancarlo Romano sat at the far end of the table, 70 years old, silver suit, the kind of man who had seen 1,000 campaigns and was bored by 999 of them. Dante stood to the side. Sophia stood at the front, clicker in her hand. She began. The campaign was called Low Q Resist, Brilla. What endures, shines. A tea was not about fashion in the way fashion campaigns usually are. It was about love. Real love, not the perfect kind, but the surviving kind. The photographs she curated showed couples in quiet, unposed moments. A man reheating dinner for a woman who came home late, a woman tracing her partner's sleeping face with her fingertip, 2 people sitting in comfortable silence with coffee growing cold between them. She had built it, unconsciously at first and then with full deliberate intention, from her own marriage. From Marco. From the way he sketched staircases while she slept, From the way he always knew when she needed silence versus when she needed to be held, from the 7 years of real, imperfect, enduring love they had built together by the time she reached the final slide. Her throat was tight. Romano was quiet for a long moment, then he said, in his deep Roman accent, "This is the first campaign in 3 years that has made me feel something." Dante exhaled beside her. The contract was approved before noon. Sophia went back to her hotel room, sat on the edge of the bed, and cried, fully, openly, without apology. Because she had just realized, standing in that room presenting the beauty of their love to strangers, that she had been neglecting it at home. She had been so obsessed with proving herself, with climbing, with being seen as more than just Marco Vidal's wife, that she had slowly, quietly, let the warmest thing in her life grow cold. She opened her laptop and changed her flight. Not Saturday. Tomorrow. First one out. Meanwhile, back in Barcelona, Marco sat at his studio at 2 a.m., the city asleep outside. He had abandoned the staircase entirely. Instead, without planning to, he had begun sketching Sophia, from memory, from love, from the ache of missing her. Her profile, the curve of her jaw, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The way she looked when she didn't know he was watching. He hadn't drawn her in 3 years. The pencil moved like it remembered something his mind had almost forgotten. Homecoming, forgiveness, and fire. The taxi pulled up at 5:52 in the morning. Barcelona was pearl grey and quiet, the streets still damp from a night rain, the air smelling of wet stone and early flowers. Sophia stepped out with her bag over her shoulder, looked up at their apartment window. A single light was on. He was awake. She climbed the stairs slowly, her heart louder than her footsteps. Stood at the door. Knocked once, softly, as if she might still be dreaming and didn't want to wake herself. The door opened. Marco stood in the doorway in a faded grey t-shirt and old jeans, hair unbrushed, the sketch still faintly smudged on his right hand. His eyes moved across her face slowly, taking her in, all of her, the way you look at something you were afraid you might have lost. Neither of them spoke as she stepped inside. Let her bag fall to the floor. And walked into his arms. He wrapped himself around her completely, both arms pulling her in, his face dropping to her hair, breathing her in like someone who had been holding their breath for days. She clutched the back of his shirt with both hands and pressed her face against his chest and felt his heartbeat, steady and real, and hers. They stood like that in the dark hallway for a long time. Then slowly, they moved to the couch. And they talked, really talked, the way they hadn't in far too long. She told him everything. The campaign, the inspiration, the moment she wept in the hotel room knowing she had been so blind. He told her about the photo, the fear, the drive to the old cafe, the sleepless night, Leo's words. He showed her the sketch as she held it in both hands and couldn't speak for a moment. "You drew me," she whispered. "I always see you," he said quietly. "Even when I'm not looking." She set the sketch down and reached for his face, her fingers gentle along his jaw, his cheekbones, the tired lines around his eyes that she loved with a ferocity that sometimes frightened her. He caught her hand and turned his lips to her palm, kissing it slowly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry too," he said back. "For what?" "You didn't. For letting us drift. It takes two people to let a fire go quiet." The morning light was beginning to come, thin and golden, sliding through the blinds in long soft bars across the floor, across them. She shifted closer, and he pulled her into his lap, her legs across his, her head tucked beneath his chin. His hands moved slowly along her back, warm and unhurried. "The campaign," she murmured against his shoulder. "It was about us. All of it. Every image, every word. It was always you." He was quiet for a moment. Then we made something beautiful even when we were broken. "We always do," she said outside. Barcelona woke up slowly. Birds, a distant church bell, the first cafe shutting its curtains open. The golden light filled their apartment inch by inch, and they stayed exactly where they were, tangled and honest and warm, rediscovering the language of each other's silences. Later, much later, when the coffee had gone cold and the morning was fully bright, she kissed him again. This time not gently but fully, deeply, with everything she had carried across 1,400 kilometers and set down at last at his feet. He kissed her back like a man who had been sketching her from memory for years and was finally holding the real thing.